Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to be cracking open a really incredible piece of intellectual history. It's a 12th century Islamic theological text called Kharida Al Bahia, which translates to the Glimmering Pearl. And what's so cool about it is that it's not just a list of beliefs, it's a step-by-step rational argument designed to prove them from the ground up. Okay, so let's just dive right in. From the very beginning, this text throws down a challenge. It basically says that just claiming something is true isn't good enough. Real knowledge has to be backed up by evidence and solid reason. So right off the bat, it poses this huge question. How do you logically prove the very foundations of your faith? So how do they do it? Well, through a discipline called Ilm al Kalam, which you can translate as the science of discourse. And its entire goal is to build belief not on simple claims, but on a solid foundation of rational, logical proof. Now, to build its case, the text does something really smart. It doesn't start with God or revelation or anything like that. Nope. It starts with logic itself. It first lays out a kind of toolkit for our minds, a way to categorize any statement you could possibly think of. And what's fascinating is how this framework boils down, well, all of reality. According to this text, any idea, any proposition, anything at all, has to fit into one of these three logical boxes. That's it. All right, first up, we have the necessary. These are things that are true just by definition. Your mind can't even conceive of them being false without running into a contradiction. You know, like a part of something being smaller than the whole thing. It just has to be true. The second box is, you guessed it, the impossible, which is just the polar opposite. These are statements that are false by their very definition. A part being larger than the whole? It's a logical absurdity. Your mind immediately flags it as something that just can't exist. And that brings us to the third and, honestly, the most important category for this argument, the possible. These are all the things that are not necessary and not impossible. They're contingent. The example here is a bit grim, but it works perfectly. Your death occurring tomorrow. It could happen, or it could not happen. There's no logical rule forcing it one way or the other. And this category, the category of the possible, is the key to everything that follows. Okay, so we've got our toolkit. Necessary, impossible, and possible. Now for the really fun part. Let's see how the text uses this toolkit to analyze the world we live in, arguing that the entire universe fits right into that third box, the possible. So the argument kicks off by breaking down the world into two basic components. First, there are bodies, and that's just a technical term for things that take up space. You know, planets, trees, you, me. And then there are accidents. These are the temporary qualities that bodies have, like being in motion or being at rest or being hot or cold. And here it is. This is the engine of the whole proof. Premise 1, bodies are never without these qualities, these accidents. They're always moving or resting or something. Premise 2, since those qualities are always changing, anything that depends on them must also be subject to change, meaning it had to come into existence at some point. And the conclusion from that? Bam, the world is emergent. It must have had a beginning. But wait a minute. You might be thinking, why can't the past just be infinite? Well, the text has this really neat analogy. Think about it. You can't complete a journey that has an infinite number of steps, right? Because an infinite journey, by definition, never ends. But the past has reached an end, right here in this present moment. So the chain of past events can't be an infinite regress. It must have had a starting point. And this is where it all clicks into place. If the universe is a possible thing and it began to exist, it couldn't have just popped itself into being. Possible things, by definition, need an external cause. And since that chain of causes can't go back forever, it has to end somewhere. It has to terminate in a first cause that isn't possible, but is necessary, a being that exists by its own nature. So the logic has led us to a necessary being. But the text doesn't just stop there and say, we're done. No way. It keeps going, using that same pure reason to deduce what the essential attributes of a being like that must be. And the attributes it deduces get sorted into two really fascinating categories. First, you have privative attributes, which describe what this being logically is not or cannot have. And on the other side, you have attributes of meaning, which describe the positive qualities it logically must have to be the creator of our world. So, just from the idea that this being is necessary, the text argues we can logically deduce it must lack a beginning, lack an end, lack any dependence on anything else, be totally unique, and be fundamentally one. If it had any of those limitations, it would stop being necessary and would become possible, just like the universe. And that's a flat-out contradiction. Okay, but I know what you might be thinking. This is all very abstract, right? It's high-level philosophy. We've reasoned our way to a necessary being. But how in the world do you bridge the gap from that to a specific revealed religion with prophets and scriptures? And that's the genius of this text. It sees that question coming a mile away. It poses the critical challenge. If someone shows up and claims they speak for this necessary being, what kind of evidence could possibly prove it? How do you tell a true messenger from a liar? To answer this, the text gives us another brilliant analogy. Picture this scene. A powerful king is sitting on his throne, his whole court is there. Some random stranger walks in and declares, "I am the king's messenger." The king hears him, but says nothing. Then the stranger makes a bold prediction. He says, "And to prove my claim, the king will now break with custom and stand up and sit down 3 times. And then, right on cue, the king does exactly that unusual thing. The king's action, without him saying a single word, serves as a nonverbal confirmation. It's the equivalent of him saying, "Yep, this guy speaks for me." And that, the text argues, is precisely what a miracle is. It's not just a random magic trick. It's an act where God, the author of the normal laws of nature, intentionally breaks one of those laws in connection with a prophet's claim. It serves as a kind of divine testimony, validating that prophet's truthfulness. Okay, so we have all the pieces on the board, the logical proof for a creator and a method for validating a messenger. Now let's see how this whole system gets synthesized into one single, powerful testimony. And this brings us to the grand finale. The central Islamic testimony of faith, the Shahada, is presented here not as a blind leap of faith, but as the final sentence in this long, rational argument. The first part, "There is no God but God," is the conclusion of the proof for a necessary being, and the second part, "Muhammad is his messenger," is the conclusion of the proof for miracles. And this leaves us with something pretty deep to chew on. In our modern scientific age, we've just walked through a 900-year-old system where reason isn't seen as the enemy of faith, but as its essential foundation. It makes you wonder, what is the role of evidence, logic, and proof in what we all choose to believe or not believe today?